Hello, and welcome to the Astoria podcast, where we're getting to know our neighbors and those who help our community thrive. I'm your host, Bree Matan. In every good relationship, there is someone who does the cooking and the other person who loads the sharp knives in the dishwasher. For those of you who don't know, you're not supposed to do that. Since I'm not the cook in our household, I felt this next interview with Jason, owner of Astoria Cutlery, should be done by my husband, Eric. After taking Jason's knife sharpening class, Eric sat down to get to know our neighborhood cutler and how his unique service is made possible because of the Astoria community. Jason shares about the struggles of growing his business and what keeps him going when things get hard. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
So let's start with your name and what you do.
All right. My name's Jason Wilkinson, and I'm a cutler. I guess that's the term used, but I sharpen knives.
Yeah. So my familiarity with you is that on the Astoria subreddit, people, and we moved to the area around 2015. Mm-hmm. And it feels like there were people mentioning a guy who would come in and sharpen knives from his truck.
Yes. Yeah.
As that I recall as recently as 2017.
Yeah.
When did you get your start? And that's you, right?
The guy with the truck, he's like the legend, and I don't know if he comes to Astoria anymore.
Okay.
But I have seen the truck, and I almost jumped out of the car to like run. I was going to confront him. I don't know what I was going to say, but I just wanted to see what he was doing. But he just drives around, mostly Brooklyn, rings a bell, and then people run out to the street with their knives to get them sharpened. So this guy's like local legend, and every person that drops their knives off has some sort of like memory or story of like interacting with this truck, like growing up here. But he doesn't come to Astoria anymore. And there's also another truck that's like normally kicking around Long Island, but during the pandemic, when I think it was easier to move around, was coming into Queens quite often. But as far as I know, I think I'm the only person doing this in the neighborhood, and like maybe, I would go as far as to say maybe even Queens. So a little bit of a captive audience, but I try to like be good to my customers so that, there's other options. You can always go to Corin in the city, or, there's other spots too.
And when did you start doing this when was the first time you did this for someone else when you got paid? Because
sure.
I know that the jump to doing this full time has been more recent, but you were at a point where someone asked you to do this and wanted to pay you.
Yeah, so actually what happened, I was working for this startup, and it was like food adjacent, kind of like Uber for cooks. Your dishwasher calls out, and you can use an app to like book a dishwasher, and then someone would show up and wash dishes at your restaurant. And because it's like super industry specific, the people that I was working with were a lot of them were chefs or in a different life had worked in the food service realm. One of my buddies who was a chef, he used to like run Michelin circuit down in the South Bay of San Francisco, but he lives in Alameda, which is like the Roosevelt Island of the Bay. It's like the island right in the middle, and it's like sleepy and quiet. But he was telling me there was this guy that was riding around on a bike, picking up knives and sharpening them, and he used to be a cook. And he was like, this guy's making the killing. He's like, someone needs to be doing this in New York. He's like, you should get on that. I kind of just like toyed around with the idea, but this was like peak pandemic, and we were all just stuck at home and going crazy and like looking for purpose, right? And I had just moved to Astoria, and I didn't know the neighborhood. I had been there for about a month before everything shut down. So I heard all these great things, and I knew that there was great people here, but just hadn't had the ability to interact with them. So I found that it was like a really cool way for me to not just get to know the neighborhood, but get to know the people that live here. And so I just like started advertising my services on Reddit and Nextdoor, and then it kind of like took off from there. Got like picked up on like We Heart Astoria, which is like a...
I remember you were on the cover, yeah?
We Heart Astoria is just it's like an Instagram account.
Right.
And people were like posting, hey, just got my knife sharpened, and it'd be like a picture. I finished with like a wax seal and like wrap them up and like kind of make them look nice. And it kind of started like people were reposting it and then people would keep signing up. But I did end up doing like a Sunday spotlight with them where I like sent them a little write-up and they posted it, which is when AOC signed up for a class and she came in with her fiance and their friend and then she posted. So, just kind of like it's a New York like lightning in a bottle thing where something just happens that leads to another. And if you stop and like don't run with it, then it just like as fast as it was there, it's gone.
It evaporates.
That's when I decided like, okay, clearly people want classes. So I'm just going to keep doing this, right? As long as there's interest, like I'll find a way to like, bring it to the people. But really just like the start was just a friend of mine saying it's happening in the Bay Area and it's a really smart idea. People are stuck at home with dull knives and they're cooking at home and they're bored. And it's a service that would probably work in a place that's dense like New York City. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned coming to Astoria just a month before, really, I think of the beginning of lockdown as a little over 3 years ago now. To me, it was St. Patrick's Day weekend, essentially. Yeah. And you were headed here for obviously other reasons if this came out of that. Mm-hmm. What drew you to Astoria to begin with? Yeah,
so I was in the Bay Area, was a chef for 10 years in the Bay Area, cooking specifically for like 2 or 3, kind of fell into fine dining and then stumbled across this business or this startup where I was working as a contractor and then ended up working for them as like an actual salaried employee in operations. And they moved me here to launch the product in the East Coast. They had already had like a New York presence. So I was based out of New York and working in that office one day a week and then riding the train down to either DC or Philadelphia to kind of like rub shoulders with chefs and like kind of introduce the product to like new markets. And then I was like, just kind of had like a temporary spot. So I landed and was like staying with a friend of a friend in Union Square. And it was like doorman and like, I never realized that this was like an abnormal New York experience. I was paying like nothing for rent because it was like a sublet. And I knew that I only had about 6 months to kind of figure out where I wanted, but I was living in Oakland in the Bay Area. And I knew that I wanted something that was like a body of water between my personal and my professional life, like a little further, more neighborhood vibes. And like I was looking for my version of Oakland and people kept on like steering me towards Astoria. And I knew like right away when I got off the train, when I was like looking at places that like, oh yeah, this is the neighborhood that I want, And so, yeah, I like finally pulled the trigger, got a spot. And, as soon as I moved in, I think it was like February is when I paid rent. And then it was March when St. Patty's Day rolled around and they were shutting everything down. So I had no furniture. I just had this like line table because the places I moved in, it was janky, had like no counter space. So I went to the restaurant supply. All I know is like heavy duty industrial kitchen stuff, but like, this was like where the operation centered around. I had like a nice working surface. And for a while it was just that stone you were using and picking and dropping stuff off of on my motorcycle and trying to like keep things organized with just writing people's names on tape and putting in their knives. And it wasn't really until I moved here and a couple years and like a full-time job that I didn't like later that I was like, okay, people keep calling me, asking me to sharpen their knives. Like, let's just try this full time and see if it works. And that was like 6 months ago. So
yeah, and it's been sustainable.
Sustainable, as in like I got a roof over my head and I'm still able to pay rent on a monthly basis. Like, it's not as much money as like I was doing, but I also see that there's upside, And there's something about like in small business where something as simple as like making a sign and spending a little bit of work that you put on the front door that says, hey, this is not the door for Astoria Cutlery, come to the side door. It'll save you like 2 minutes a day of like coordinating with people, but that's like your 2 minutes that you always get back. And there's like little tiny incremental changes that you make are yours, Whereas like this is an effort that you wouldn't put in for like a job that you're just like a 9 to 5 employee for,
Right. I noticed that sign.
Yeah, and it probably
Yeah.
sent you to the right direction. And believe me, all these things are done because like you start to wonder like why is no one reading what I'm sending them? And then you realize like, you know, when they say if everyone around you think is an asshole, like you're probably the asshole. It's like maybe my instructions are just unclear. So I've started changing wording and like copy and then like trying to find ways to like steer people towards my workshop, which is in an alley, you know. So you gotta like find little things to like make things more convenient for yourself and your customers and just the experience and the exchange faster and better for everyone.
Yeah. So my wife has a questionnaire that she has people fill out.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your father in the questionnaire. And what did your father do?
My father was in building construction, but he had a small business, and it was like his life's goal to like put us through college and like not end up like him. And he was always like late to everything because he was always just like, it was a one-man show, you know?
Yeah.
And like the work was done when it was done, right? And I could tell that like that's not what he wanted for us. And it's funny because like, yes, I did like a stint in like food service. That was the dream. And then I like found a way out. But then I always like find myself falling back into like working with my hands and something I must have picked up from him. And it's just like, I just remember, you know, going downstairs to the basement and he would be, you know, at the little workstation and he's always just fixing something. And it's something that like made me realize that, you know, you don't always have to like throw it away and buy something new. Like sometimes you can just open it up and see how it works and like put it back together. And that was kind of like the premise for my business was like opening up the process of a small business and then using a lot of the tech that I had learned, automations and messaging and like signups and this flow of capturing and getting customers and then like kind of putting it back together into like a usable package. But like, I just always like wanted to fix things and like even from like an environmentalist perspective of like we just throw so much stuff away, you know. It's like if it can be serviced and go back out, like feels good to me.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's a cheap knife.
Yeah, my dad was an environmentalist.
Yeah.
And he spent a career working for the Department of Agriculture.
Oh.
So I grew up in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of kind of a similar thing of, you know, my dad putting in so much work and time. He and my mom, I think, were the first in their generation to go to college. Mm-hmm. And I think he wanted to figure out what the next step was for us as kids, just me and my sister. And it was interesting to grow up in that time and feel like that's what they wanted, but they didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even with a solid job, and my mom worked too, like when it came to college and things like that, then it was like suddenly he was like, well, I'm going to pick up extra work here and there. Like he did census stuff. Like when the census was around, it was like he can do that on the weekends. And I mentioned that I worked at an ice cream shop. So like it was a small town. It was rural Midwest, less than 2,000 people. Mm-hmm. You could drive 25 miles in any direction and only hit smaller towns of like 1,200, 800, 600 people.
Yeah.
Like as a town of 2,000, we were somehow like the hub.
One.
We were the big city. And so it was, New York was never like even a dream for us, for, you know, my sister or I. And I didn't even move out here till I was past 35, you know. And so it's an interesting thought exercise to sort of go back and go like, not just like what were the motivations of like making a better life that your parents wanted for you, but like what in that point in time was thought to be the better thing, like what and what were the mechanisms available to them to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, and like similar story too. You know, I think that like maybe that no one really knows what the actual better life is. I think the idea is just to like provide the opportunity, and then you find something, your piece, right? Your contribution, whether it's like to society or like yourself finding peace. Like the reason why I do this is because I feel that I'm giving back to the community that I live in, And the more I interact with like small businesses that are doing the same, like the more validation. There are some days where I feel like I'm just total imposter syndrome. You know, like this is just a joke. Like, you know, what am I doing, right? But like even calling yourself an adult, you know, you're like looking back to when you were a kid and you're like, clearly everyone had it figured out. Dad had it figured out, but you know, he was like close to my age when I was born. So it's like, probably didn't, you know? They just wanted to like give you the tools to like one day do it yourself. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pretty small town. It was a little larger than yours, but it was the same situation where the only reason it wasn't just like a one-horse town was because there was a university there. And during the summer, like the town just vacated, right? And it was like that. You could like throw a rock in any direction and just hit like wide open fields. And I was like you said, I had New York wasn't on my radar. I didn't even want to. I started working in food service when I was like in high school just to put gas in the car and, you know, probably at the time like buy weed or something like that, and, you know, beers and hide them under the bed or something. But, you know, just like normal high schooler shit that you were like, the reason why you just need pocket spending money, right? Yeah. And then I just started to like fall in love with food, and I started doing it while I was in school. And like, full disclosure, I never finished college. Like I just like senior year, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I talked to my chef at the time. I was like fortunate to have some like chefs that like kind of like ran the circuit in places that were culinary leaders. One of my chefs was from New York. The other one was from Charleston, which has like a pretty vibrant food scene. But both of them, they're like, you got to get out of here. You got to go. Like, I can send you to New York.
And this was where?
This was in Blacksburg, Virginia. So Virginia Tech is like, I grew up in Blacksburg, went to high school there, and then went to college at Virginia Tech, same small town, which, you know, probably should have like went somewhere else, but like it was just so easy. Like the admission process was like, you just walk into the auditorium and then like hand them your application, and they'll just tell you by the end of the day whether you're in or not. And they definitely like fast-tracked people from Blacksburg. I don't know like if there was some deal worked out, but it was just, once I got in, I was like, well, shit, I'm not going to apply anywhere else, right? You know, because it's like a good, decent school for the state. But I just realized that like I was in love with cooking food, and a lot of people fall into this trap. This is why like food service, especially at like the higher level, are just so underpaid. Because people, they're like chasing this dream of becoming a chef, and then you're exploited and sometimes expected to work for free, like off the clock, or like sometimes as like a stage, if the restaurant's good enough to warrant it. And so you'll just keep chasing this dream and just like destroy your body, both physically and mentally. And then, you know, you end up like too old to like keep up with the kids because your knees are giving out and your backs. And if you haven't made it to that level, then you're done, you know, like what do you just become like a rep for Cisco, right? And I like packed everything up and decided I was like, I'm going to go chase this dream. And for me, it was San Francisco because in my mind, it was as far away from Blacksburg, Virginia as I could possibly get. I had some family out there, so it was like a little bit of a support group, like a place for me to land. My dad actually and my stepmom moved to Santa Cruz, so I had a place to stay. And I like helped open a restaurant in Santa Cruz and just kept trying to push into the Bay, like photoshopped tax returns because like they want to see that you're making X amount, you know, in order to pay rent. And you know, it's like according to the landlord, I was the highest paid fucking chef in all of the Bay Area. But you know, it was like whatever I could do to get in there. Yeah, and like more than half of what you make is going to rent, you know, but you get to eat and you're spending all your time at the restaurant anyway, so it's fine. But it wasn't until I was in SF for a little bit, or Oakland, and like learned how to become like a city dweller, where I was like, yeah, I could do New York, you know, it's the next obvious step. And then when the place I was working at the time offered to move me here and pay for the expenses, I was like, it's a checkbox you got. Like, if you're going to get this opportunity, why would you not? Yeah. And I was only here for 6 months before they had shut down the entire operation. And so for me, it was just a free ticket to New York. And then the rest was kind of just like, you got to make it up as you go. But I'm not the only one here doing that. So this is the city to do it, if any, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it blows me away how the neighborhood just steps in as that community. Like, you think of New York as this giant city where you can be faceless and anonymous and disconnected from your neighbors and everything else.
Yeah.
At least that's the Midwestern idea
That was
of
the dream.
what New York is. Yeah.
I wanted to be faceless. Right?
Yeah, right.
But you
And
can't
then-
do that here.
No, you get out here and like you're seeing the same people, and then they're like, it's just a small town.
Yeah.
Like certainly in the good ways.
You're not in a bad way at all.
Right.
Yeah. And I learned to appreciate that. And like, I think that what scares people away from a big city is like they don't want to lose that. But it's even like tighter and close knit because you're literally on top of each other here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be seeing the same people every day because they're coming in and out of their same businesses that they own. And it's like, why would you not make relationships if I'm doing a butchery class? Like, why would I not make a deal with the local butcher, right? Or like, if I'm doing a date night, why would I not have a deal with the pizza guy? And he sends me pizza, I sharpen his knives and his pizza cutters. Like it's like everyone has some sort of service to offer. Like, it doesn't need to be like a monetary exchange when you both have something that's like needed, especially in my case, the realm of food service. So I'm finding that like I'm able to like kind of create these relationships and it eases some of like the operational burden, but it also creates this like network of people that just like have your back. And really, like, I don't think I could do this in any other neighborhood. I don't want to go as far to say as like I probably couldn't have done this without the Astoria subreddit, and just because that community is like it's large. It's probably like one of the largest subreddits of any neighborhood ever, maybe. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like the amount of people subbed to that subreddit is like larger than my small town of like 40,000, like 50,000 people. So you just get so much reach, and like working on like creating a presence there, I was able to
And it cuts
be in
a
touch.
pretty wide swath.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
not just like all the 20-year-olds
No,
in the neighborhood. It's the immigrants. It's the guy posting there who says he speaks better Japanese than he does English.
Mm-hmm.
And like he's been here for, 2 years, but he's looking for a different job. Can he get some help? It's the people looking out for the cats, the stray cats. It's all of these age groups. To me, it's not even just strictly about the size of it, than it is that it's probably the most representative neighborhood subreddit I think I've
Agreed.
ever encountered.
Yeah, and also it lacks some of that like Nextdoor or Facebook stuff where it's like people complaining.
Yeah.
It's more of like people observing and living and like showcasing that experience versus like Nextdoor is more concerned with like, new
Crime.
people. Yeah, crime, exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes like racist dog whistle undertones that you'll see on Facebook, and like when the H Mart moved in, they're like, why can't we just have a regular grocery store? And it's like, regular to you, it's like
Right.
some people are excited about this.
Yeah.
You just like, I feel more represented by that sub, and I don't know if it's just like the community of people, the Venn diagram of like-minded folks that are interested in cutlery, and then Reddit user, which sometimes tends to be like more tech enabled. I know that it's like the interface for some people is like a little harder to use and more of a turnoff for folks that like aren't really like dialed into the tech scene. I don't really know what it is, but I found that like you said, I would say like the focus of the subreddit is more like observational and like sharing an experience versus like
real
complaining.
community building.
Yeah. There's like a conversation that's occurring, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's like sometimes not for the better, but for the most part, it's like a very positive place to interact with people. But that being said, you can't just like get on there and post every day like, hey, come sign up. Like, I need more customers. You have to like be a little more tactful. I made sure that when I started posting regularly, I created like an Astoria Cutlery account, because I have a very, very old Reddit account, like 10, 15 years. And it's like, I don't know what I said back in the day. Like maybe I was like, I don't want
Somebody will look at my post history and go,
yeah, I've seen like businesses get like chased off for like saying controversial opinions on the subreddit. So I was like, all right, like brand voice, I learned this working in startups. Like I need to make sure that Astoria Cutlery is like buttoned up. The vision that I want is like like a service for the community, and like I have to be like a representative of the neighborhood. So I wanted to make sure that, when I go to that subreddit, I'm not like spamming and like advertising my services. It's like, okay, I'm only gonna like post on there if I'm like offering something new that they don't know about. So that
avoid the brand fatigue.
Yes, brand fatigue. And dude, like I spent enough time in the startup where you like interact with people whose job is marketing, and like I was like, why are these guys getting paid so much money to like post shit on social media? And now eating my words, because like I have to spend like an hour a day, like, oh shit, like I need business, so I have to like, oh, I just sharpened like a cool old knife and cleaned it up and like polished the blade, and like I guess I have to spend an hour in iMovie like putting all this B-reel together so that like to get people excited. But then it's like, you make a little promo about classes, and then I literally see people signing up for class. Clearly it works, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a necessary evil. I just feel like what I do now is like 40% sharpening knives and then like 60% all of this other stuff. But that's just the nature of like a one person show, I'm sure there's plenty of books out there, but I had no idea what a small business owner or whatever this is would entail. Mm-hmm. But it's been like a really crazy learning experience just all around.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, Jason talks about learning from his mistakes, what keeps him going when things get hard, and his big dart energy. Stay tuned. And we're back with Jason and Eric discussing the leap from working a 9-to-5 job to owning your own business.
It's always that weird cliff to jump off of when you're going out and what you're selling is yourself and not something that you're a part of a group of as a business or as a service or something like that. And so you had that point where you said, the job I have is not working for me.
Yeah.
And you had to step out and you were like, I can make this work as a business.
Yeah.
And it's going to be me solo. Yeah. And like I spent some time sort of as a permalancer, not really as a full freelancer in the line of work that I do. But most of the people that I work with are freelancers, and it's job to job to job to job.
Yeah.
And that's a life I feel like I could never live with the level of anxiety that I would have on not knowing what comes next.
We don't even know if you're going to like make rent by the end of the month sometimes.
Yeah. And so are you feeling, 6 months in now, are you feeling like that anxiety is real? Are you keeping it at bay? Is it still always sort of overhanging? Do you feel like you have a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan?
Oh, my God. I definitely got plans, but like, it's good to have them, right? Mm-hmm. But like right now, it's like the month plan. It's like, what do I need? I'm still learning a lot about seasonality and like what that means to be a cutler. It's like, oh, apparently like everyone wants their stuff sharpened before Thanksgiving. Probably should have known that one. Also before Christmas as well, like the holiday season. And then I've noticed now that like it's getting warmer. And I think people have like moved on from that, like, okay, I spent a bunch of money during the holidays, like, let's go out and eat. So it's like a little less, it's like a little slower. And then you also learn things that like, man, February is really a short month, to like kind of put everything together. It's like those extra 2 days, like that hurts, like those are days that I need like to have knives moving in and out the door, but you're still paying the same amount for your month-to-month services. But I call it like the Rocky montage moment where, it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to like look back at what I learned and be like, if I'm going to do this alone, like this is what needs to be done. And a lot of it was like building automations and like record keeping, because there's a lot of shit that you have to keep organized. Like I forgot to give this guy his towel back. And I don't think he's gonna miss it too much, but I just sent him a message, and like I have a new a cataloging system.
We're in an audio medium. He's got a sticky note. He's got a Post-it note on a towel, on a small towel,
and
like
it's got their
towel.
ID number and how many knives they have, and like how many other items that are kicking around the shop that should have gone into the bag to go back to him. And so what like these are things that I had to learn, and I learned them the first time. Like there was once 2 Amy's and I wrote Amy on the side of the knife, and I just like the next day I was bagging everything up and I'm like, what have I done? You know, like whose are whose? And you don't want to be like, hey, which one of these knives are yours? You know what I'm saying? So now everyone gets like an ID number because I can have as many Amy's as I want, but like, you know, the number never just keeps going up and it corresponds to the row in the spreadsheet. But when I have those moments where I feel really anxious, and it's a lot, it's very often, I just go back to like how miserable I was at the last job that I did. And it was like things were opening back up and I was like, oh, okay, well, time to like put this side project away and like go get a real job. And, you know, you need insurance, Jason, right? You're getting older and you need all these things and stability, like paychecks that you know are coming in. But it was like food delivery. It was operations for like a food delivery company. And they like told me they weren't like the other ones. And as someone that used to be a chef, like, I fucking hate food delivery. And like anyone that's associated, like what it's done to the industry, you can't not participate in their clown show because then people are just going to order from someone else, right? But like the amount of gouging that goes both ways to the customer, and then they turn around and they're like charging fees and more money to, you know, the actual restaurant.
Provider. Mm-hmm.
But then the customer thinks the restaurant's fucking them over when in reality it's the middleman that's like scraping off the both sides. They told me that like everything is different and that they have like a charitable arm to their, like, oh, for every meal that we sell, we like donate a meal. And like, it wasn't any different. Yeah. And then so I'm just on the phone with all these restaurants and people that I like know personally, and you know, people that I like respect as restaurateurs, and they fucking hate me. You know, I call them and they're like, the only reason they'll like interact with me is because I used to be a cook, so I can speak their language. But it was just like sad and miserable, and I didn't realize like how much of it was going to be like me trying to convince people to buy something that I didn't believe in. And like it just got to a point where like that's what I use whenever I'm in a position where I'm like counting money that isn't coming into the door and being like, all right, I got to pay for Zapier, which is like my automation service, and messaging. What if I'm late on this? Then I won't be able to like text people, or like, you think my landlord will mind if I'm like 2 or 3 days late on rent? And it's like, it's never, we're like, oh, sweet, I got a month of rent in the bank. You know, like as soon as I get the money, I have to like buy new stuff to like keep growing the business. And then you realize like why all these like tech companies just like randomly run out of money and lock the doors and then fail and stuff. Because it's like you can never like have capital like waiting around for the rainy day. You have to like keep reinvesting. But I just look back at like what I was doing and like how every day I was just like paralyzed with like dread before I like got out of bed and made my 2-second commute to the computer to like log in and have these dreadful interactions with the restaurants and people. You know, that's like my motivation to like keep going. Like even when things get tough, it's like, at least I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to go down such a dark hole. But yeah, I mean, there's like good restaurant tech. And I really enjoyed the place that brought me here. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that like Black Swan events, that business just couldn't work in a pandemic. Can't have strangers coming in and out of your kitchen when there's like a super, you know, highly contagious disease, and, you know, interacting with food that's feeding more people. It just, I'd probably still be working there, honestly, if like none of this ever happened. So it's like kind of cool that like weird, you know, you gotta adapt and survive, but like to have something kind of come out of like a situation. I mean, yeah, pandemic built my business, and I would have never stopped doing what I was doing previously if, you know.
Happened.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there with stories very similar.
It's the classic thing of like, you know, nobody really knew the real changes of the 1912 pandemic until 20 years later when they realized like, oh, well, all the architecture changed or whatever. It's like, it's going to be weird to look back and go, what beyond the obvious changed in New York because of COVID? So, yeah. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to have like lived in that time period. I was in a restaurant and they had all those floor stickers that were like, please stand 6 feet apart. And I like convinced the guy. I was like, "Give me one of those stickers." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because I want it as like a keepsake. I want to like look back 30 years from now and be like, I have like the floor sticker that you peel and stick and put on your floor to keep people 6 feet away. Just something to like show to your kids and be like, yeah, well, pandemic souvenir." But I mean, like honestly, I don't even think everyone here is like truly recovered. Like I had to learn how to like be a starving college kid all over again. But, thank God I had, like, cooked long enough. It's like I'm buying dried beans and, like, soaking them overnight. Yeah, no cans anymore. Yeah. But, like, it's not a position I wanted to be in my 30s, right? Yeah. It wasn't what I imagined. And it's also why you realize that, like, grandma, grandpa kept everything and fixed everything because, like, they went through that initial like Great Depression and like all the things that like led up to it and surrounded it. Like you don't like you see the value in things that you would normally just throw away and buy a new one. Right. And
you're like that Ziploc bag didn't even get wet.
I'm fucking reusing Ziploc bags these days, man.
Like crazy. Yeah. If it ever had anything dry in it that didn't crumble, then it's getting reused.
Yeah. Just give it a little rinse. But it's like. I know, and then I can justify it and just be like, oh, I'm an environmentalist now. Like, it's too much plastic, right? Yep. But in reality, it's just like, this shit costs money, and then like now money is just not worth what it used to be, and it's good for you though. It's good for you. You know, it's stressful, but like we shouldn't be living that way anyway, where everything's disposable.
Yeah. You mentioned a dart team.
Yes.
And I see here, I'm looking at a dartboard with a Astoria Cutlery,
it's like my
team shirt.
Yeah.
Hanging off one of the darts. So what's the dart team?
The dart team were Big Dart Energy. And it's honestly, I think the dart team is like what like kind of got me meeting people. I delivered knives to a dude, picked up, sharpened, dropped off. Really cool guy. He rides motorcycles. We talked bikes, shot the shit, became friends. And then I used to throw darts in college. My mom and stepdad did it, and then they would like leave on Wednesday nights. The babysitter would come over because they were going to darts. It was like their way of just getting rid of us.
Right.
And then so when I was in college, I like joined their dart league and like started playing, and then got some of my friends involved. And it was a fun time, but I like hadn't played in forever. And I was just asking, I was like, does anyone know if there's like a dart league here? And the guy that I was friends with that I had met through Astoria Cutlery, he was like, yeah, I'm on a team. Like, come play with us. And like, he no longer plays on the team. He just got married and he's like trying to like get his life all reorganized and set. So he didn't play this season, but like met all these other people and like made all these cool Astoria friends. And it's like, on Mondays.
Does it move? Like, is it like
our
place?
Home bar is Doyle's.
Okay.
And so like half the time we're there, half the time we're other places. Could be like Mad Donkey or like Rivercrest sometimes. Okay. But it's
played darts at the Rover.
Yeah. The Rovers team's really good. Those Irish guys know how to throw.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like honestly, I feel bad because like most of the people on our team like don't even drink, but like we all tip because like at one point in time we were like rowdy and stuff, but they were like dying to get us to come back and play because having that business on a Monday night is pretty huge for a bar. Yeah. And then so we're like, oh, sorry, everyone on this team's like not drinking right now, but like at least the other team though that's gonna be coming in, hopefully they are. And but yeah, we're good. We eat food there, and I always tip for all the soda waters I drink and stuff. But it's a lot of fun. It's really like it was my way of like meeting people here that I like just knew tangentially. Yeah, that shirt is like unrelated. I'll do anything for like if enough customers ask, like, you got any merch? I'm like, yeah, I'll make some. So I there's a little printing press that I made over there, and so I actually like pull my own tees. And
nice.
This is one of those projects too where like I fucked up the first one.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's $10 down the drain. And
the shirts are $10.
No, because the shirts are expensive because I didn't want to do like shitty shirts. It's my logo on it, And this was a process too. Like for that text, I had to like find this font, and then I had to buy the font, and then I had to like I was able to make the little fake knife thing on the bottom myself. But for this other shirt I'm working on, I like commissioned my design to like a tattoo artist in like Indonesia on Fiverr and like worked with them. And actually, let me show you this. I'll show you like one of the mocks that I used as like part of my thank you card. That was like the mock-up that they ended up.
Oh, wow.
But it's kind of going to be like a motorcycle style tee.
Yeah.
I'm afraid hopefully it doesn't look too like Ed Hardy-ish. That would be really bad. That was not the intention. But, just something fun. And, I'd never like, no one fucking buys them. But at the same time, it's like, it's mine. It's something I did. Yeah. And occasionally someone's like really stoked after a class. Like, yeah, I want a t-shirt, And I was like, yeah. And they're wearing it around town, Like AOC's got one. Her and her, I haven't seen it on social media wearing it, but it's, I mailed them some when they came through. So it's very cool. You gotta do little fun projects to like kind of keep things interesting. Otherwise, you just dwell too much on the business part of it. So
right.
It's okay to have some failing endeavors as part of your business.
Right. So my wife just had our first in September.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. And I mentioned being a permalancer. The change in my employment status, I'm still with the same company, just now I'm an actual employee, but also that permalancer status didn't really afford me real paternity leave, and it was only the state stuff that I was eligible for, and even that, like a ridiculous amount of hoops to go through. So I had a lot of money saved up, but in the interest of like making sure like I'm meeting needs, and my wife was not working. She had been a freelancer. And so there's a like anti-food waste app, Too Good to Go.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the $5 grocery bags from Gorillas regularly. And it was quite the Iron Chef experience of like, what am I going to get today?
Yeah.
Oh, more raspberries. Okay, I guess I'm making salad dressing. Is what I'm doing with that.
Sounds fun.
It was a challenge, and we've kind of phased it out a little bit. So it's I had that same thought of like I didn't plan on being here in my 40s.
Yeah.
But also we're managing and we're doing okay, and we're gonna there was an end in sight.
Yeah.
Which was kind of the comfort that I took in it. And so I'm curious, I asked, about a 1-year plan or a 5-year plan, but you've kind of really found roots in this neighborhood. Has it started to feel like
it's hard to walk away from? Yeah. I had like kind of in my mind thought that eventually my time in like New York was gonna like come to a close, and like you said you just had a your first child, right? My brother did as well, and I wanted to be like closer. He lives in Vermont. I wanted to like be closer and like be that uncle and like be in his life, and like, still try to do it as much as possible. But now I feel really bound to this neighborhood, and not in a bad way. And I'm kind of glad that I did eventually find a reason. And I also do find that like every time I go away from New York, just to like, whether it's to visit family, friends, or whatever, just to get out of the city, I realize that like, yes, I am like a country boy, like at heart, I could probably like drive a tractor for the rest of my life. But like, I just get very anxious when things like slow down a lot, and I need that like movement and that energy that like only this city can provide. And so I think I'm like a lifer, and I'm not feeling too bad about being the knife guy in Astoria. Like, it doesn't sound terrible. I want a storefront, like talk about like 5-year plans. I'm gonna like work out the prices right here, but like eventually there's gonna need to be a retail aspect. The amount of I'm missing out on when people are like, what knife should I get? Wouldn't it be really nice to be like, oh, come browse my wares, check out all these knives I have, right? I could do that, but, right now it just like makes more sense to be able, I'm still working from home, right? But like to have this garage and like being able to like share in some cases, like whether it's sharpening or like vegetable prep or chicken breakdowns, like share that with people to like see people that are like stoked on food. People aren't taking my class unless they're like interested in cooking. So I want to be able to add retail to that experience and like have knives and inventory, and not just knives. I want like all the cool kitchen shit that like got me excited as a chef, like spoons, like antique spoons for like plating, and like all the little cool toys, like cookbooks. I don't even know, like maybe even like some sort of like motorcycle stuff. I don't get how that's gonna fold into the whole thing, but like all this like started with me like picking and dropping stuff off on my bike, and like people thought it was cool, and I'm like, yeah, I guess that's cool. But it's like, I'm the motorcycle guy that sharpens your knives and picks it up. It's a lot of like weird crossover with like coffee shops and motorcycles, and they make that work. So I was like, maybe I can do it with knives. But, you know, that's like further down the road. I just know that there's room for a cutler here. Like, Corin doesn't, like, I'm not going to hurt their business by existing, you know? Like, they're huge. They probably like welcome that because they're pretty inundated like at any given time.
And for reference, that's
a pretty well-known knife shop, and like they're in so deep where they can like get knife makers to make blades and stamp Corin on the side, and so they can sell like in-house brands that are like made by like real like artisan knife makers in Japan. And it's actually like a little bit of a like supply chain mafia, because there's such a demand now for Japanese knives in the States. There's like suppliers on the US side that just buy the whole lot. The way it works with the makers in Japan is like it's a village of like 15, 20, 30 people, and they all work on the same knife. And someone's like beating out the billet, someone's like putting the grind on, someone's putting the handle, someone's like making the handle, someone's like putting them in the boxes. And they just make like 60,000 knives a year, and that's it. They don't give a shit if you want more or less. So really, in order to talk to these guys, you have to have like a pretty big order. And I'm unfortunately like a little too small. So I have to go through these resellers that have already taken off. There's like no meat in the bone left for me. For me, it's just good because I would be able to have something to have people have a reason to like come to me, right? And also I have like lots of opinions and like about like, which knives you should be using for what. But, you know, I need to like start getting in a situation where I can start like building these relationships. And if it means that I have to like team up with another smaller like cutlery, whether it's like some guys in Chicago or somewhere else where we can buy these lots and kind of divvy them up amongst each other. That's next, you know? Right now, I want to like branch out to really like, I have no presence in Ditmars because no one wants to walk here, right? When I start delivering, I end up over there a lot picking up knives. But I want to work with like a small business on Ditmars where I can just have a system where people leave their knives, I pick them up, and then a week later they come back, and some sort of like food adjacent place. I've been talking to like the beer and cheese collective guy about just like having a little pickup location. So, and if that works, like maybe Greenpoint or Williamsburg or something like that, where I just like relying on like foot traffic and people walking stuff to me is not everyone's able to like get here. So I got to find ways to branch out. But then eventually retail, you know, that's probably like 2-year scope. But if I do it, I want to do it nearby. I think 31st actually.
31st is a very sleepy.
It's a sleeper.
Jewel.
Yeah. 30th is like, there'd have to be some sort of like club aspect at night where like the DJ comes out and then I sell weed out the back room. 30th is like a little too much for me. But
31st is pretty cool. So my wife and I, when we moved out here in 2015, then 4 years later, the person who took over my job at the TV station, who is one of my best friends and is good friends with my wife, an opening came up at where I was at, and I said, hey, like, you should come out and move out. So she moved out, and she lives on 31st. And she loves it because the open streets thing is just like any given weekend, it's just step outside my door and like something cool going on.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I love about this neighborhood is that the street fairs are like not just a once a year kind of thing of bringing a bunch of vendors from outside and whatever. Right. It's like there are regular throughout spring, summer, and fall events. It's that, again, that community building aspect of it.
Yeah, I really want to see that grow. When I lived in Oakland, they have this thing called First Friday of every month, and it's like almost a disaster. Like, I can't believe that they're still able to, like, the street is destroyed by the end of it, but like it is local vendors and artists, and sometimes you feel with these street fairs that it's like it's the same traveling circus of vendors that like if you go to the one like in Brooklyn, it's the same. They just move it to a different street, but when you go to the 31st one, it is like Astoria businesses.
Yeah.
And I've met some of the 31st Ave, the organizers, and I might just get the little wheel setup going and like, just make a little noise and like kind of, get in touch with the community, like just people that probably just don't know about me. And like, that'd be a good way to get out there. I think that like, I love what they're doing, and I think they're moving in the right direction, but I want to see a farmer's market in that too, like a full, why can't we have a farmer's market here? And like, it is great having the 24-hour produce store, but like full on farmer's market, I want that. I think that we'll get there eventually, it's just a matter of, it takes time.
Find a spot.
Yeah, well, what they should do, all right, total tangent, but that building that's Misi now, right? It was like Calexico for two weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the cursed snake
spot.
pit. Yeah,
the cursed location.
Just fucking knock it down. Knock the whole building down. Whatever. You got to buy the property, turn it into like a plaza, put some hookups so you can throw some food trucks in there, and then once a week run a farmer's market out of that triangular property that's too big for one place, but too small to be subdivided into two. It's just it's like impossible for a business to survive there.
It's just such a weird spot. As I understand it, I think actually that the law firm on the second floor there may own the property. And since they
for the better good of the neighborhood, give up your property. If you're listening.
This has been fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks
thank
for
you so much,
through, man.
Well, that's our show. I want to thank Jason for teaching Eric how to sharpen all the knives I've ruined over the years. You can find out more about his classes at AstoriaCutlery.com. At the time of this recording, Nisi on 30th Ave was a brand new restaurant, and it has since thrived where others did not. Could it have broken the curse? You'll have to try them out and decide for yourself. I want to thank you for listening. I hope this show inspires you to get out and meet your Astoria neighbors. The Astoria podcast is recorded and edited by me, Bree Matan. To show your support, please rate and subscribe because that will get this show to more ears within our community. If you're interested in being on the show, please visit AstoriaPodcast.com to learn more.